Hello, everyone. This is Considerations from Visual Ecology in Fisheries Research Design. My name is Robert Blackmore, and I'm a master's student in the Cognitive and Behavioral Ecology program at Memorial University of Newfoundland. For anyone who may not know, Newfoundland is an island off the east coast of Canada in the North Atlantic Ocean. And here on the map, I've highlighted a few of the places I've done some of my research for reference later in the talk. So what is visual ecology? Visual ecology is a field of study within behavioral ecology that deals with the behavior of an animal with respect to interactions between its visual system and the environment. Here are many common examples, some of which examine the general ecology of things like coloration, and others study behavior directly, such as foraging behavior in this rough-legged hawk, who can see in the UV and searches for vole tracks left in the grass, invisible to the human eye. Or another example, a young sea turtle's attraction to light. Phototaxis, or an animal's attraction to light and movement towards the source, has been exploited by humans for centuries, from bonfires on beaches attracting fish closer to shore, to artisanal fishers in East Asia lighting fires on their boats to draw fish near, pictured here. Many commercially available products aim to aid fishers in increasing their potential catch. One example is this crab pot light thought to attract both crab and their krill prey, shown to massively increase catch rates. Other examples include using glow sticks, as pictured here, and more recently replacing glow sticks with more eco-friendly options that aren't signal use, such as this LED attachment and fluorescent phosphorescent paint on this jig. Pictured here is the ProGlow from Fish Tech Marine. I have one here. And anyone involved in the sword fishery in the eastern US might be familiar with the switch-operated Lindgren Pitman LED. I have one here just to show. Sensory ecology has long played a major role in gillnet bycatch, particularly marine mammal pingers being commonplace, at least here in Canada, since the work of those like John Leon. More recently, the visual ecology of bycatch species has been considered in an effort to deter these specific species from becoming entangled in fishing gear. You may be familiar with the term BRT, or bycatch reduction technology. Pictured examples are lights being used on gillnets in South America for reducing sea turtle bycatch, like these ones here, as well as projects trying to exploit avoidance behaviors in seabirds by placing flags, both imitating eye spots as well as high contrast warning panels on gillnets. A portion of that high contrast flag project was performed here in Newfoundland waters, spearheaded by Bill Montevecchi. Both striped and checkered flags were tested in the herring fishery, where they use surface set as opposed to bottom set gillnets, such as those used in brown fisheries like Atlantic cod. The idea was to use a known facet of the visual ecology of diving seabirds, such as northern gannets and murres, that is, the capability of recognizing the black and white flags while foraging underwater, and having birds avoid interacting with the gear once seeing the flags. However, through rigorous testing, it was found that bycatch numbers did not change between nets with or without these flags, and in fact, herring catch was significantly decreased by their presence, which of course is not ideal for use in a commercial fishery. Comparable results were found by Field et al. In the Baltic Sea when similar experiments were performed, whereby bycatch was not significantly different using the contrast panels. Field et al. Also tested lights on nets, and a long-tailed duck bycatch actually increased by using flashing white LEDs. Moving forward, we wanted to focus on other ways we could use visual ecology as a tool in bycatch mitigation research. And for context, in 1992, a moratorium was imposed on the ground fishery in Canada, which includes one of our most economically and culturally vital species, Atlantic cod. This meant that tens of thousands of gillnets were suddenly removed from the ocean, and the effects of this removal could be studied on an ocean basin-wide, multi-year scale never seen before. Regular et al. Looked at the long-term trends in seabird population dynamics post-moratorium, and found that the mass removal of gillnets had positive implications for diving seabirds, such as gannets, and for alcids like murres and puffins. However, the fishery closure left surface-feeding birds like gulls without a large source of food, fishery discards, and their populations saw a decrease. Nowadays, there's still a moratorium on the large-scale Atlantic cod fishery. However, a small-scale inshore commercial fishery still exists in rural communities for Atlantic cod. Here, gillnets are the primary choice of gear for their efficiency. However, as we all know, gillnets come with the ecological consequences even on a small scale like this, episodically catching things like seabirds and marine mammals. Pictured here is one event that took place in 2007 near where I live in Newfoundland, with a couple hundred common and thick-billed murres being caught in one fisherman's 3 nets. So how can we change our perspective and focus on other more sustainable gear types? Well, Jan Ruzel summarized Newfoundland's 3 main gear types and scored them in 3 categories using many surveys and interviews with local commercial fishers. Handlines were shown to be in all 3 categories the best gear type for many traits, including the least possibility for bycatch, the cheapest gear and the easiest to use, and the least destructive. One drawback and reason they're not widely used, however, is outlined by their selectivity, meaning the possibility for undersized catch, which is not a factor with gill nets and the choice of mesh size. Other reasons are their efficiency. They take much longer to produce the same quantity of catch than nets or pots, and the physical strain and fatigue that comes with long handline fishing days. Nonetheless, handlines are used today in a recreational setting. Newfoundland has a food fishery open to the public each summer, where handlines are the only allowed gear. And in some areas such as Fogo Island and Petty Harbour, both of which have fishing cooperatives that have banned the use of gill nets in their respective bays. Outside of this, handlines are sometimes used in between the setting and pulling of nets to increase daily catch while waiting on the gill net to fish, but not substantially. The thought is that if we improve a few of the qualities in which handlines are lacking and allow them to compete as an efficient gear type compared to nets, we can promote the use of handlines as a sustainable gear and as an alternative to steer away from the widespread use of gill nets. So how might we do this? We aim to incorporate visual ecology as a priority in our research at the design stage to avoid some of the problems we've encountered in the past. We know Atlantic cod are a bentopelagic demersal fish living at about 50 meters depth and below, meaning that their light environment is restricted based on the physics of light attenuation through the water column to a blue-green range of light. This of course means that their eyes have evolved to make best use of this light environment for hunting prey or interacting generally with the habitat. Being a commercially relevant species, we know a good bit about the retinal physiology of these animals through a lot of work on light's effect on juvenile cod growth and behavior in an aquaculture setting, and particularly by 2 separate studies on their spectral sensitivity cited just there. I want to make the point that these aspects of physiology and behavior in many animals, even those seen as target catch or incidental bycatch species in fisheries research, have not been studied or explored in depth, which poses an issue to some of the general points I would like to make about using visual ecology as a tool for research in fisheries and study design. Using this available knowledge of how cod perceive their environment and use green light in their foraging strategies, we set out to test green light's effect on cod catch in the fishery and on their behavior in a lab setting. So this past fall, we examined wild-caught cod at the Ocean Sciences Center. Choice tests were performed using green, white, blue, and blank or off LEDs. The light environment in these tanks were altered to simulate the cod's natural light environment using filters, and an overhead infrared camera recorded the cod's behavior and proximity to the lights. Using these videos, we'll be able to determine the effects these lights have on individual cod's behavior, which will better inform decisions on this fishery and gear alterations in the future. The field component of our study involved using these FishTech Marine green LEDs with the Fishermen's Co-op in Petty Harbour, who banned gillnet fishing in their waters and would find any results for our study immediately applicable. In 2018, as part of my bachelor's degree, we piloted the LEDs in the recreational fishery, and the results showed drastic increases in catch rates using them, which motivated us to scale up our experiment to a commercial scale. The Petty Harbour fishermen fish on berths using the baited hook configuration pictured here. Their fishing method allowed us to test each boat as either having used the light condition or not, and to calculate catch rate based on the whole boat's catch per minute. We found, as you see in the graph, that mean catch rates using the LED lights were higher than without, but with such variability in the data, some boats catching next to nothing one day and over 1,000 pounds of fish the next. Differences were found to be non-significant. No effect was found on the average size of catch or the quantity of bycatch caught either. Throughout fisheries research, particularly that which uses alterations like visual cues that can alter the catchability of gear, we as researchers should always ask ourselves when designing studies, not only does this technology we're testing affect bycatch and target catch rates, but does it contribute to light pollution in any significant way at the depth and perceived brightness at which we plan to use it? Does this technology put its users at a socioeconomic advantage over others in the industry? And what would its application realistically cost the harvester? Do these gear alterations affect the propensity of the gears ghost fishing and self-baiting or otherwise pollute the environment? Or could this technology increase the probability of catch for a non-target species previously not considered, such as decreasing cetacean bycatch but increasing shark bycatch? Implementing these precautions and factors into design from the beginning will allow for better interpretation of the results, reduce the possibility of error or harmful effects, and help with assimilating the gear alterations or gear switching into widespread industry use. And so, as a summary, I'd leave you with a few ideas that I hope permeated my talk. The perspective of all animals involved in a study and their relevant behaviors should be considered a priori, not in the discussion section of the publication. Gear alternatives should be explored in fisheries where possible and where sustainability is an issue. Visual ecology can be used both as a tool for mitigating bycatch and as a tool in enhancing gear types. And lastly, in order to take visual ecology into account when doing research, the physiology, sensitivity, and visually oriented behaviors need to be quantified for a broader range of species. That's everything I have, and thanks for listening.